All right, gang. It's 12 o'clock on Friday, so that means that it's time for another ISBDC webinar. I want to thank everybody for being here today. Thanks to Matt, who we're going to get to here in a second, for joining us. But we want to quickly run through a couple things that we typically talk about at the beginning of each of these. So again, this is a webinar series that we are doing alongside of the ISBDC. And today we're going to be talking about 401k and benefits. But each week we've got a pertinent topic to small business resiliency and recovery is the main goal of this series, is to help small business be resilient and recover from what has become kind of the COVID crisis over the last year. And so the first thing you might say is, well, who are you, Jeff? So I'm actually the Indiana director for a program called G-Beta, for a company called Generator. And so Generator is an equity-based accelerator that is, we're based out of Wisconsin originally, but we have now expanded our programming to over 22 different locations across the United States, with one of them being, actually two of them being here in Indiana. We have our main program, which I run in Indianapolis, and then we have a Fort Wayne program as well. And so one of the things that we've done as Generator is our equity-based accelerator allows us to help support high-growth, venture-backable organizations that are typically in the startup phase. But what we've realized as a company over the past 8 months is that there's another level of support that our community needs that aren't just for the high-growth, venture-backable company. The small business community needs resources and needs support throughout all of this crazy time that we're going through. And so we've been fortunate enough to partner with the ISBDC to bring this webinar series to give that level of support to small businesses. And so again, we are doing this each week. Uh-oh, I just did something. Hold on.
We're getting all of our technological difficulties out of the way, Jeff.
That's right. Getting them all. I'll handle them all, Matt. Don't worry. So part of that support is the ISBDC Small Business Resiliency and Recovery Trading Series. So every Friday from 12 p.m. Eastern through March of 2021, we will be doing a webinar series dealing with topics that are pertinent, applicable, and can help small businesses be resilient and recover through this time. And so we're thankful for everybody to be here. Want to remind you that it is open to the public. So anybody that wants to be part of this can attend. You can find all the information on the isbdc.org website. But with that, you did not come to hear me talk. So I'd love to introduce today's speaker, Matt from Raymond James. He's here to talk to us about 401k and benefits. And with that, I will stop my share, turn it over to Matt, and let him take it away.
Well, don't sell yourself short there, Jeff. I mean, you always have some pretty good insights. So I think we would be blessed to hear you speak. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. Can you see my screen, Jeff?
We got it, buddy. Take it away.
All right. So as Jeff said, my name is Matt Koehling with Raymond James. Really excited to be here. And just to give you a background on how I got involved here is, and I didn't tell Jeff I was going to say this, but I actually met Jeff through a local organization called Leadership Johnson County. And I took that program about 1.5 years ago. And Jeff just so happens to be involved with the board. And I met him and we connected on LinkedIn. And I was telling him about some of the things that I was doing with an organization in Greenwood called Restore Old Town Greenwood. And what we've been doing the past several months is offering online webinars so that small business owners in the area can help grow their business. So some of the things we've been talking about is like creating videos. What goes into creating a video? What goes into marketing that video? And then we're having one coming up about making ads. So what we're trying to do is to help all of you that have been struggling this year, because if you look at the economy, the majority of us out there are struggling. I mean, there's a very small sect of the actual economy that's doing really well, and that just happens to be the big tech companies. But for most of us out there, and I'm going to guess that most of the people on this call, this webinar, are struggling. So one of the things I'm trying to do is just help out as much as I can. So the thing I'm going to talk today is about exploring your retirement plan options. And just to give you a little bit of experience and depth into our team, I work on a team of financial advisors with over 100 years experience. We primarily work on the individual side, but we also specialize in working with small to medium-sized businesses. And what I'll say to that, and this isn't just a plug for me, it's just an idea for you to think about as you're evaluating what kind of retirement plan you want to do, is I would highly recommend that you reach out to somebody who actually specializes in this area. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of advisors out there, don't actually specialize in this. They just do it as a complimentary service to their clients. So they might have a business owner that's their client, and they say, okay, well, I'll do a 401k for you because I have your individual stuff. Well, a lot of times when you get in that situation, that person won't really be in tune to the different changes that are happening in the market. And the retirement plan business is completely different than the individual side business. So everything I say today, just remember that. Reach out to someone who knows what they're doing. They specialize in this. They're really going to be the best equipped to help put you in the right plan for your needs. And it might end up that right now isn't the option for you. And you're not really going to know that until you end up speaking to someone like me and going through that process. And the reason why I got in this business, just so that you can understand where I'm coming from, I joined the industry about 4 years ago, so I'm very much new to this. Don't fact check me on all this, because there is going to be information that I don't know. This is a learning process for me. But the reason why I got into this industry is because I enjoy helping people. I've always dreamed about having my own business and helping others, and this helps me to kind of live through those business owners and help them, and it excites me, and I'm really happy to help. So the first thing that I'll talk about is exploring the different retirement plans. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, why would I want to put something in place? The economy is not doing very well. My business is struggling. Why is this important to me? And I would say that the biggest reason why you would have a retirement plan is going to be to attract and retain your employees. Bar none, that's why you would want to have something. And the bottom line is, if you're a business owner, you're looking for quality talent. And if we look at the current economy, prior to COVID, we had one of the lowest unemployment levels that we've ever seen. So the idea is that, and I'm sure all of you can understand this, finding quality talent is very, very hard. And when you're talking to younger people who are just entering the workforce, they're going to want to know what you have to offer them, whether it's going to be how much you're going to pay them, or what kind of benefits do you offer. Health insurance? Do you have a 401k package? And if you don't, you should really think about this, because it's a really, really good way to attract those kind of people that you want to work for you, because it's going to help them tremendously in the long run. Another big reason why you're going to want to do this, and maybe you're saying, well, I don't have a lot of employees, it's just me, is going to be the tax advantages. So the big tax advantage for you is the employer is going to be writing off all those contributions and administrative costs. So if you are doing really well right now, like the construction business or the engineering business, you might say, okay, well, I'm ready to start putting something in place because I have all this taxable income that I need to reduce. So that's going to be a big advantage for you. And I think that's overlooked a lot of times when you're looking at retirement plans. The other side of the tax conversation is the employees. Every contribution that you're going to be putting in here yourself is going to be able to grow tax deferred. And I'll back up for a second there. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, there are tax deferred accounts and there are tax free accounts. So the best way to explain this is a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA. If you're not familiar with how those work, a traditional IRA is basically like you're taking your income, you're depositing it into an account, and then you're going to take a deduction off of your income. And the 401k works the same way. You're going to say, I made $50,000 and I'm going to contribute $5,000 into a plan. And it's really like I'm making 45. And then that money that you deposit into that account is going to grow for a long period of time into retirement. And then eventually you're going to have to pay tax on the amount that you take out because the government wants its money back. They want to tax you on that to generate income for the government. So that whole period in the time when you deposit money and when you take it out, you don't have to worry about paying tax on any of that, which is a huge advantage. The other side of that is that if your employer has a Roth option, then that will grow tax-free. You don't get to take the tax deduction up front, but it allows it to grow tax-free, so you don't have to worry about taking that money out at a certain time or paying tax on that when you do. So that's a really big advantage to having some kind of a retirement plan. The other reason why you might want to consider some of this is the match. I always, when I'm evaluating individuals on their financial plans, the first thing I'm asking them is, are you hitting your match? Does your employer offer a 401k? Because if you're not hitting the match, then you're really missing a huge opportunity because there's no investment out there that can give you a 100% return on your money with no risk. I mean, they're giving it to you. Say, if you put in 3%, I'm going to give you 3%. And if you're not doing that, then you should be. And the last thing that I'll mention, I think this is another thing that employers miss is the diversification of your assets. A lot of small business owners, I think, get too focused on putting money into their business and not investing in themselves. And the thing that I always say to that is, what happens if your business goes under? What happens if your big business becomes obsolete, like so many small businesses have in these past couple months? What are you going to do? How have you prepared yourself for the future? And a 401k or a retirement plan can be a really good way to do that because you're going to have this money set aside that you can live on later in life. So don't get solely focused on one area or another. Make sure that you're investing in yourself because there's going to come to a point in your life where you are not going to be able to do the things that you can't do anymore. The whole idea behind this is being able to choose what you want to do in retirement and saying, I don't want to work anymore, or I don't want to work as hard anymore. So keep all those things in mind when you're selecting if you're going to put something in place. As far as the conversation we're going to have today, really the areas of retirement plans that I'm going to talk about are going to be defined contribution plans. And that's the majority of the market now. A defined contribution plan is exactly what it sounds like. You are going to have a plan where you are going to say, I'm going to contribute X amount of dollars, just like a 401k. The employer is going to contribute X amount of dollars, and that's going to go into an account. A defined benefit plan is more like your traditional pension plan, which you don't really see these that often anymore. I mean, Eli Lilly has one, and another good example is like a government institution. And how these work is they're going to say, we're going to provide this to you regardless. And when you retire, depending on how much you made, how long you worked there, we're going to give this benefit to you, and it's going to come in the form of annual income. So I'm not going to cover these today because they're not as common. The bulk of my conversation is going to be in the defined contribution area. And when you look at retirement plans, there's a lot out there. There's a lot of different options that you have, but the most common that you're going to see are going to be SEP IRAs, simple IRAs, and 401ks. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can go about a 401k that I'll get into, but those are the three that I'm going to cover. And the first one on the list is going to be your SEP IRA. And ideally, a SEP IRA is going to be good for a smaller company that's looking to put away large amounts of money. So the benefit of having a SEP IRA versus like a simple IRA, for example, is just you can contribute more. And when you actually look at a SEP IRA, when you're looking for eligibility, for example, it's going to be to anybody who is at least 21 years old and they've worked for the business 3 out of the 5 preceding years. So one of the disadvantages when you're looking at this plan, and it might be a reason why you don't want to do this, is because once you set one of these up, you have to contribute to it at least for a year. And that's going to go to everybody. So if you have a lot of employees, it might not be beneficial, or you might not want to do it because you're going to have to contribute for everybody. And you might say, well, I don't want to do that because I want the employees to have skin in the game. Where a lot of these kind of plan makes sense is for someone with a smaller company that wants to put more in on an annual basis than a simple IRA. But one of the things that are nice is that they're easy to set up. Opening a SEP IRA is not that much different than going and opening up your own IRA, which is very easy. You're not required to have any required annual plan documents like a 5,500 each year. There's immediate investing. The employer contributes for you. The participant makes their own decisions on what to invest in, which is nice because you don't have the actual liability of choosing their underlying investments, which is a good feature. The deadline to establish one of these is going to be before the filing the federal tax returns, including the extension. So what I'm going to say, and this will apply to all of these, if you're considering something like this for your company, you really should be thinking about this at the beginning of the year or right now for next year. We are kind of past the window to put one of these in place. You still have some flexibility with the SEP right now, but it's really going to depend. You'll have to reach out to your accountant to see if you can actually do it. But usually the cutoff is October. So if you're thinking about doing this, let's reach out to somebody now, whether it be me or someone else, and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'm looking for. And we can go through the different ins and outs of each different kind of plan and find what's right for you. But you're really past the window for 2020. But like I said, the contribution limits are 25% of the employee's net compensation, or $57,000. That's a pretty big number for someone. And it might be hard to think about that now, but that's a really big number. And that's more than what you can do in a traditional IRA or a simple IRA. So that's a really big bonus there. The only thing to keep in mention here is top heavy testing, and I'll reference this again later with the Safe Harbor 401k. But what happens in these plans in a SEP IRA is if you have employees that are making lots of money, like a doctor's office is a good example. You have certain employees that are making more than some of the nurses. And what happens is if you have owners of the company that are contributing a lot and some people aren't contributing any, then it becomes top heavy. And what happens is when that happens is either you're going to have to reduce your contributions from the top heavy, higher compensated employees, or you're going to have to contribute on their behalf, which most of the time an employer is going to say they don't want to do that because that's just more cost. So keep that in mind here. Like I said, I don't do a lot of SEP IRAs. I think it's a unique situation for the right person. I do a lot more of simple IRAs and 401ks. So a simple IRA is really ideal for a smaller type of company that maybe just be getting started, has fewer than 100 employees, that's looking to get something in place for minimal cost. The beauty of a simple IRA is the fact that it doesn't cost a lot of money and it's easy to administer. And in order to be eligible for a simple IRA, you have to have $5,000 in compensation during the previous 2 years and expected to earn at least $5,000 in the current year. So this is kind of confusing. So feel free to ask me a question if you do have a question, but I'll stop on this for a second. So here's the scenario. You started working for a company in 2019 and you made $5,000. Fast forward to 2020, it's January, and you've made $5,000 in the first month. You are now eligible for contributing to a simple IRA. So it doesn't matter as much when you start, as long as you participate in work for the company in 1 year, and then in the next year you make $5,000, then you're okay. Then you can start contributing to it. And that can be kind of confusing because when you look at like a 401k, for example, it's usually you're eligible as soon as you start working for them and as soon as you start getting a paycheck. But they might have a vesting schedule on as far as when the employer contributions start. But usually with a 401k, you can start right away. So it's a little bit different and it can be kind of confusing. And I usually get questions about that when I'm talking to business owners. So once again, the advantages of a simple IRA are easy to set up, low cost. You don't have to worry about any documentation or any top heavy requirements. You don't have to file a 5500. So if you're thinking of something easy, this is a really good solution for you. And I do these all the time. A lot of times it's going to be for like a trade type company, like a landscaping company, for example. I think simples make a lot of sense because you're going to have a lot of turnover. So not only are you not going to have to contribute for them because they're not going to be around there long enough to contribute to something, but they're not going to have as much income to where it's going to make that big of a difference. The deferral limit is $13,500. If you're meeting with someone who only makes 40, they're not going to want to contribute over this amount of money because they're going to need to pay for their everyday expenses. And with a simple IRA, you actually have a catch-up contribution of $3,000 if you're over the age of 50. So once you're over the age of 50, you can contribute $16,500. Well, that might be enough for most people. So keep that in mind as far as how much you can contribute based on the kind of employees that you have. It might make sense from a fee and a deferral idea that you do something like this. As far as the contributions are concerned, you have two options. You can do a 3% match to match for 3%, or you can do across the board 2%. I don't find too many people do the 2% because if someone doesn't contribute, then you automatically have to get them 2%. Most of the time, they're going to do the dollar for dollar match up to 3%. That's what I find most of the time. Like I said, the deadline for these is October. So if you're thinking of putting one of these place, we're going to want to do like beginning of the year, and we can reach out to someone and we can talk about that. The investment decisions are made by the employee. They can do whatever they want, and they're going to bear the majority of the cost. The investment cost, as far as what they're going to pay for their individual funds, is going to be completely on them. So you don't have to worry about excess fees there. And then the last one that I'll discover, and I think that this is really where I'm picking up a lot of business is 401ks. And why I like 401ks is because you get a little bit more as far as flexibility. There's usually more options, and then you can also contribute more. So an 401k plan is really suitable for employers with more than 25 employees that are looking to put away lots of money. So I have clients that have a smaller amount of employees, like 3 to 5 that have 401ks, but most of the time it's going to be for your bigger companies. The other nice thing is that there's also a profit sharing attachment that you can add on top of it. So the traditional, and I'm kind of skipping ahead a little here, but the contribution that you can contribute to a 401k is $19,500. You also get a $6,500 catch-up contribution when you're age 50. So that's $26,000. You can also do a profit-sharing contribution if your company's doing well to say, okay, at the end of each year, we're going to look at our numbers and we're going to say we're here. We have this amount of money. We're going to throw an extra $5,000 to everybody because the company's done well, and you can do that up to a certain amount. And when you look at different kinds of 401ks, there's what's called a safe harbor 401k. And I think that this option makes a lot of sense for companies like the medical field, for example. I'm not trying to harp on the medical field, but what this allows you to do is avoid that top-heavy testing that I mentioned with the SEP IRA. You will contribute 3% for everybody, or a 4% matching contribution, which is most common in a safe harbor, and that eliminates that highly compensated testing. So if you have highly compensated employees, they can put into this plan and not be regulated by how much they put in. And I've ran into a lot of companies, in fact, one a few months ago that had this, and the higher earners weren't allowed to put it as much as they wanted in, even though they could afford it. So having a safe harbor option, I think, makes a lot of sense for the right company. The other one that you can look at is called a solo 401k. And if I'm talking to anyone out there that has their own business and they're a solopreneur and they're thinking about, okay, what can I do? It's just me. I don't have any employees and I'm really looking to reduce my taxable income. I think a solo 401k is a no-brainer, because you don't have to worry about any of the contribution limits or sorry, not contribution limits. Let me take that back. You don't have to worry about any of the contributions for employees because it's just you. A lot of people avoid a 401k because of the cost. Well, if it's just you, you don't have to worry about registration for 50 employees. You don't have to worry about matching contributions for anybody because it's just you. So solo 401k can be a really good option. And that would allow you to contribute more. So if you look at the overall advantages of a 401k, higher contribution limits is one, allows the 401k to contribute towards retirement while reducing the tax burdens for both parties, the employee and the employer. The annual non-discrimination test, like I just said, is not required for a safe harbor plan. And then also, one of the things that you can look at for a 401k, if you get big enough and you have the right record keepers, you can look at loans. A lot of times right now, due to the CARES Act, there's a lot of people that need money because they don't have any income rolling in. Well, with the CARES Act, they've actually eliminated the penalty for taking out of these 401ks, which is a little bit different than a loan. But down the road, if the CARES Act doesn't continue, you can take money out and then pay back yourself. It'd be like you're taking a loan from yourself. The only problem with that, and I'll just put a little asterisk here, if you get let go from this company and you have a loan available, you can actually have to pay that back. And if you don't pay it back after you've left the company, then you'll actually get penalized for that. So keep that in mind. I don't usually recommend loans unless it's a dire situation, but they can be available. So if we take a closer look at a 401k, the deadline to establish these is really going to be October, whenever the tax year is done. I know it says December 31st, and like I said, October is really the deadline for these things. So keep that in mind if you're thinking about establishing one of these. I actually just had to tell someone we were talking about this and they wanted to put something in place for this year, and I said, well, we're past that point. We need to start thinking about next year. Contributions are made from the employee, and then the match will come up on top of that. The nice thing about that is that the match can be discretionary. So if you're having a hard time and you don't have a lot of money to give to your employees, you can make that match zero, which a lot of companies are doing. That way people can contribute to it and have an option to defer some of their paycheck in, but it gives you the flexibility if something happens to where you can reduce your expenses by a little bit. Like I said, the deferral limit for a 401k is $19,500, and then you can also do that catch-up contribution on top of that, which would get you to 26 if you're over the age of 50. But with the profit sharing contribution, you can get up to 57,000, which is a big deal, especially for if you're talking to those solopreneurs that are looking to contribute as much as they can into something to reduce their taxable liability. And then, of course, you're going to have to fill a 5,500, which is public information, by the way. There's a website on the internet from the government where you can look up this kind of information. And there's other administrative costs with doing that. So that kind of wraps up the basics of the kind of plans that you have. I haven't seen any questions coming in. Either I'm doing a really bad job or a really good job. If I see Jeff's jumping on here. We got any questions, Jeff?
Well, I actually have one, Matt. So from working with founders with early or small business size companies, like if you could give like one piece of advice when it comes to this, like what is the big mistake, or what is the thing that you wish, as somebody who kind of has a key to all of this information, like what is the thing that you typically hear from folks that you're like, if I could convey this one thing, it's go do this, or whatever that looks like? Do you have like one single thing that you see regularly that you would advise our small businesses to do?
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of things that I hear on the personal side and the business side, but I feel like the one thing that I would tell people is invest in yourself. Like, put something in place. The earlier that you start something like this, the better off you're going to be and the better off your employers are going to be. And when you look at your competition on what they're doing, you need to invest in your company and your employees. You need to tell them that this is going to be a good place for them to work. We're investing in you. We're giving you the tools and resources for you to succeed. And a 401k is a retirement plan and a 401k is a really good way to do that. If you talk to most people, they don't have these big bank accounts where they're throwing in tons of money. They don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars in these taxable accounts that they're managing. Most of people's assets are in their 401k. And when they leave that company, they're rolling that over to the next 401k. And the reason why that's the case is because it's so easy, right? You get your paycheck, you're going to contribute 5%, you don't see it, and you can't spend it. So having something in place is a really big benefit for people so they can start saving for retirement. And what happens a lot, and unfortunately, is that you get too late. You're like me, you have kids, and you got all these expenses coming in, things get tight. And you wait 10 years and you get to 40 years old and you don't have anything to your name, it's going to take you a while to get caught back up and to really get you on track. So if I could say anything to who's listening to this, start early. If it's $50 a month, if it's $100 a month, put as much as you can early and try and refrain from keep increasing that lifestyle to where you need to buy all this extra stuff. Because if you can do more earlier on, it's going to make a big impact for you. And there's studies all out there. If you put $10,000 in now versus wait until 30 and 40, you're going to have triple the amount of money that you would have if you were to wait. So that's what I would say. Start early, whether it's in a plan or just opening up an individual account. Start throwing money as much as you can. Try and ignore all of the noise around the election and the economy, because there's going to be periods where it's going to go up and down. And we all know that, there's going to be recessions and even depressions that are going to happen. I think they say 3 to 4 times in someone's lifetime, you're going to see a correction like we just saw in March. So it's going to go down, but try not to focus on that. Just stick to the plan and then keep putting money away.
I love that. One other question. What advice do you have for the business owner, founder that feels like they shouldn't do a 401k or a plan like that until they have the ability to match? Do you run into that a lot? Do you battle that? Like, what is that advice for that person?
I would say I think having something is better than nothing, because even though there isn't a match, employees can still contribute to it. Now you can make an argument that, okay, if they don't get a match, then they can always look at like a Roth IRA, for example, and they can just give their employees more money and they can do it on their own. But I find that most people who have the opportunity to save on their own don't do it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I sit down with somebody and they don't contribute to their retirement plans. And it's because they don't have something through work. So they always have the option, but that doesn't mean they're going to do it. And by having something through work that you can automate, I mean, one of the benefits of having a 401k is that you can have auto enroll. So if people don't select an option, you can have them automatically put money in until they say no. And a lot of times that just helps people because it's out of sight, out of mind. By the time you get done with all of your expenses, you're going to have this amount of money, and that might not be enough to get you on track for retirement. So I think even if you're struggling with the idea of a match, I would still recommend putting something in place, because there's going to be people that can and maybe don't have all the financial burdens that they want to start contributing to something. And $19,500 is a lot different than $6,000. So having something in place, I think, is a good option. The other thing that I'll note that I didn't note earlier is the Secure Act. That was there's been a lot of stuff passed this year, and Secure Act is one of those that kind of flew under the radar. Secure Act, there's a lot of things that changed, but one of them is the small business credit that small business owners will get up to. It starts at $500, but it can be up to $5,000, and that's used for the registration costs. So 401ks just became a lot more reasonable as far as administration costs. They're still going to be more expensive than your simple, but at least they just passed that legislation that's going to help. So if you're worried about cost, sit down with someone and actually run through a proposal, and we can tell you how much it's actually going to cost you. And you might be better off than you think.
That's awesome. Thank you. I think that's it.
Yeah.
On my end.
So the last thing I'll close with, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, is the benefits of working with someone like Raymond James. And there's a lot of good companies out there, but the benefit of working with a bigger company is that you're going to have a lot more to offer than your smaller firms. The benefits of working with Raymond James is we have a lot of different investments out there. We've worked with all the big record keepers, like your John Hancocks, your Voyas, your Mass Mutuals, your Transamericas, your Empowers. We work with all of them. So you're going to want to pick someone who has the flexibility to work with all the big players so that they can select, Fidelity, Vanguard, all those that are out there, so they can pick the best option for you and your needs. Some of the additional capabilities of our team, the benefit of working with John on our team, for example, he's a accredited investment fiduciary, is that we have different capabilities than your other average advisor doesn't have. And one of them is a 338. I won't get into this. I could spend a whole conversation talking about the difference between a 338 and a 321. But a 338 makes it a lot easier for someone like you or a smaller company that doesn't want to spend all this extra time on a retirement plan. They might say, I want to focus on my business. This is what I pay you for. And a 338 allows you to do that. Basically what happens is Raymond James selects all the different funds in your lineup, and it takes out the fiduciary burden of what you have to pick. So you don't have to worry about having this committee and documenting all this and becoming a fiduciary. Raymond James or whatever company takes care of that for you, and that frees up time for you, because when I'm talking to people, they hate talking about this kind of stuff. They don't want to deal with all the administration and picking out what kind of funds to be in there. So for a lot of people, I think a 338 makes a ton of sense. And by the way, it's most of the time it's cheaper because of that. It's going to be more of a, I don't want to say cookie cutter, but it's going to be, you're going to get this versus a more custom solution for a 321, where you can really get into what benefits I want, what kind of funds I want, how much do I want to pay for each kind of manager, those kinds of things. We have plans in each, and that's the capabilities of working with someone like me. Also, another thing is we have good relationships with a lot of the good players, which gives us specific pricing. And the fact that we have a lot of plans gets us even better pricing. So we're going to have a leg up on other people. We have unit investment trusts within the collective trusts within Raymond James that have specific pricing. So we have a lot of flexibility there. And then lastly is our team. We have 4 advisors on our team. John, like I said, he's an AIF. He's been in the industry 30 years. He's really the head on all this. I'm really just getting my career started in this. So a lot of times I'll have John around just to ask questions. And if there's anything that comes up, he'd be available as well. And he's happy to answer any questions. So that's it for me. Is there anything else you'd like me to cover, Jeff? I'm happy to answer any other questions and give you my opinion on anything else.
No, Matt, I think that takes us to the end, and we don't have any other questions that have come through. But I do want to take a second and just thank you for giving your time today. This was awesome. I think it's applicable, helpful, something that we're able to move the needle for the small businesses in our community. For any of those that are watching this, feel free to reach out. I can put you in touch with Matt if you want to have a conversation about how he and Raymond James can come through to give you some options for your business on that. And then also, as I always wrap up these, you can find more information about all the stuff that we've talked about. You can find recordings of all the webinars that we've done up to this point. If you visit stayinbiz.org, which is the ISBDC's resource center. So please feel free to visit that for your resources from the ISBDC. Matt, thank you again. This was awesome. I really appreciate the time, the information that you shared. And we will see everybody hopefully back here next week to talk about mental health for employees. So everybody have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.